Yeah. Anybody else have any comments? Dennis, I guess we're ready for a motion, and actually, Ian, before I lose you, on warrant article 11, do we have a contact person at CTONS with whom we can figure out the scheduling before we reschedule the meeting on 11?
I would say I think Kate Poverman is the contact person. I know I see Harry Bors is on. I missed the very end of our meeting, so Harry might have a better sense than I do.
Yeah, I would say Kate or Jean.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, if you ask any of us, we might be able to give you an indication. Right now, we're scheduled to meet again next Monday at 5.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So Dennis, I think we're ready for a motion.
All right, Neil,
Yeah, so I'll move the recommendation of favorable action on warrant article 10 as printed in the warrant. Second.
thank you. Let me share my screen. Maybe you guys can see this in the room, who knows? All right, so we're voting on a recommendation of favorable action on warrant article 10. Michael Berger,
Yes.
Harry Bors,
Yes.
Cliff Brown,
I don't
See.
think he's here.
Elise Couture Stone,
Yes.
John Doggett,
Yes.
Harry Friedman,
Yes.
David Mark Goldstein,
Yes.
Neil Gordon,
Yes.
Susan Granoff,
Yes.
Harry Grossman.
I think he was out of town this weekend.
Okay, Kelly Hardebeck,
Just joined, so I'm sorry, Harry, I'm gonna abstain.
Elisa Jonas,
Yes.
Janice Kahn,
Yes.
Brian Ladd,
Yes.
Alec Lebovitz,
Yes.
Carol Levin,
Yes.
Liz Linder,
Yes.
Pam Lodish,
Don't think she's here.
Jocelyn Murphy,
Yes.
Donnell O'Neill,
Yes.
Glenda Olson Pelkey,
Yes.
Fran Perler,
Yes.
David Pollock,
Yes.
Carlos Riguejo,
Yes.
Margaret Robotham,
Yes.
Lee Selwyn,
Yes.
Christine Westfall.
Not here.
Okay, so by a vote of 22 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstaining, our recommendation is for favorable action on warrant article 10. Thank you, Ian. Thank you to the subcommittee. And I think we are ready for someone to take us through the Community Preservation Act recommendations.
That someone will be me.
Great, thank you.
Hi. So warrant Article 9 is the CPA, the Community Preservation Act appropriations, and there's 2 main components. The first component is appropriating the upcoming fiscal year's revenues. So this is fiscal year 27 projected revenues into the various reserve funds that comprise the CPA, as well as appropriating from those current revenues an administrative line item. So for fiscal year 27, total revenues are currently predicted at $4,120,806. The bulk of those revenues, 3.49 million, are from the CPA surcharge that we all see on our real estate tax bills. $100,000 is projected in investment income. And then there is a projection that the state contribution, their state match, would be $526,000. That's how we get to the 4.12 million. So of that 4.12 million, 10% goes into an open space and recreation reserve. 10% goes into a historic preservation reserve. 10% goes into community housing reserve. 5% is going into administration. And then not quite the balance, 2.557 million is going into an unallocated budget reserve. There's approximately 180,000 of the projected income that's not being appropriated. I did not get an answer I could understand by email this weekend, and I'm hoping maybe Laura Smead or Nancy Heller a little later can explain what happens to those missing funds. The second half of the appropriation are grants that are being recommended by the Community Preservation Act Committee for appropriation this year. The funds for these grants come out of the reserves that we just went through at the appropriations. So the first category is community housing. There are 3 grants totaling $1,976,947. Going to the Brookline Housing Authority for Truspin Apartment roof preservation. Also going to the Brookline Housing Authority for a window preservation at the High Street Veterans Project. And then finally, $400,000 is being appropriated into the Affordable Housing Trust. The second category is historic preservation. That's $1,665,398. There's 2 grants, one to the United Parish for steeple restoration of $800,000, another to the town, the Brookline Parks and Open Space Division for restoration of the old burial ground tombstones, and that's for $865,398. Finally, the final category is open space and recreation. There's a total appropriation being recommended of $430,000 divided among 3 grants. One to the town for the D. Blakely Hoare Invasive Species Management for $20,000. One to Parks and Recreation for tree inventories and planting of $35,000. And then the final appropriation is for $375,000 to the Lars Anderson Park Green Infrastructure Study. The subcommittee in its deliberations didn't have, though it had a few questions about the various grants, it didn't object to any. It was supportive of all. There was some conversation regarding the Muddy River Greenway and a grant that was submitted but not approved that we understand there's some concern about the city of Boston's participation, not funding or supporting with cash their participation in that program, and that's why the CPA committee didn't approve it. Of the current grants, it was noted that United Parish has recently stopped participating in the pilot program. And we did have a conversation that we might want to continue today as to whether or not participation in the pilot program should be a factor in awarding of CPA grants to nonprofits and towns. For fiscal year 27, this is the first time that an appropriation was made from Community Preservation Act funds to the town's Affordable Housing Trust funds. We were curious as to whether or not this could become a regular and larger part of the town's contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and whether or not that might even open up the ability to reduce the free cash component of the town's contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. According to Nancy Heller, CPAC is in discussion with the Housing Advisory Board about executing a memorandum of understanding. My impression is this would mean that there would not need to be a yearly grant application from the Housing Board for this type of grant. Then we turn to more of the policy concerns in our conversations. It was noted that though this year there was no objections to any of the grants, in past years there have been some variations of opinions with the committee, and that at town meeting, we feel it's important that town meeting has the ability to vote each of these grants individually. The other thing that we noted is that the state contribution to the Community Preservation Act has declined dramatically just in the short time since Brookline has been a participant. In the first year that Brookline participated, it received a little over $1 million from the state. This year, it's only this year, fiscal year 26, it only received $513,392, which is a little bit over 15% of the funds that were raised by the town. And as Laura Smead, the town's community preservation planner, explained, there are a lot of rules and restrictions that come with those funds on how the CPA program is administered, both and how both the local and state revenues can be used. And it struck at least me that this is sort of similar to the debate we've had in the past about whether or not it's worth the MSBA matching funds, given all of the limitations on how, or requirements on how we can use the funds. An analysis of the fiscal year 25 and 26 grants concluded that though 66% of the grant applications were town entities, when you looked at this, and only 34% were nonprofits within Brookline, including the Brookline Housing Authority. When you look at the allocations on a dollar basis, 70% of all dollars raised by or given out by CPAC were going to third parties, and only 30% were going to town-related projects. It was explained that part of that is because the housing projects, which are the third-party entities primarily, are expensive, and they also leverage outside funds. But it's still of note and worth considering the impact that this program is having on the town. The subcommittee has recommended that the full AC in the fall submit a warrant addressing 3 CPA policy matters. The first being that each grant be able to be voted or required to be voted individually at town meeting. The second is to consider whether participation in the town's pilot program be either a requirement or at least part of the scoring criterion for nonprofit grantees, CPA grantees. And then the final thing is to commission, whether that be a moderators committee or a select board committee, an assessment of the CPA program as the town approaches the 5-year anniversary. After 5 years, the town can choose if it wants to repeal the Community Preservation Act, or it may decide that it wants to modify the surcharge or modify the program rules. So by a vote of 5 in favor with no opposition or abstentions, we approve the appropriation of $3,934,000 in the fiscal year 27 CPA funds. And we approved the grants of $4,072,345 for fiscal year 27 CPA grants.
Thank you. And before we go to the petitioners, is it I recognize that the subcommittee would like to see future grants be separated out for independent vote. Are you proposing dividing the question for this time, or do you think that the items are, uncontroversial enough that that would not really be worth the effort to do it?
The latter, we think it's
Okay.
uncontroversial enough, and if someone does have a controversy, they can move to divide the question at town.
Okay. All right, thank you. Nancy, if you're here and available and you want to add any additional color to the subcommittee report, this is a great opportunity.
I don't have much additional to say. I'm thankful that the subcommittee has voted to advance our projects this year. We think they're very good projects. I will say about the Muddy River, we wished we could have funded that, but one of the CPA requirements is that we have ownership or control of the things that are going to be funded. And in the Muddy River case, we don't. We only have half the control, with the exception of a couple of the Muddy River bridges that are solely in Brookline, but they're small and not as in bad shape as the others, the ones that cross the Muddy River and have vehicular traffic. These are pedestrian bridges that are only in Brookline. So that's the reason, one of the primary reasons we couldn't really go ahead. And we're thinking about how to get a more regional approach, as we had in I believe it was 1997 was the last time that Brookline and Boston and DCR and MBTA, who also have a stake in some of the bridges, were able to collaborate and work together. So that's what we need for the Muddy River. I don't think this is not the end of it. It's the beginning, and I'm very glad that the staff had done so much work to show us the priorities there. I will say that the Muddy River bridges, if you go and look at them, you will be, I don't know the word to use, but they have vegetation growing out of them. They have trees growing out of between the stones. Stones are falling out. They're not so good, as they should be. And so they are deteriorating. There's no question about it. They need quite a bit of preservation work. So we hope that will come back in the future with a regional plan. That's what I want to say. The other thing I would ask is that Laura put up the warrant article so we could all see it and you could understand a little bit more about the funding pattern. It's just a quick 2 minutes. Laura, could you do that? The actual warrant article?
Oh, the actual, okay. Not the slide with the, sure,
No,
just give me a
I
moment.
think it's better to do the warrant article.
And then I have a few things to follow up with too from what
Oh,
Carol
okay.
Levin brought up too, but let me get that pulled up.
For those of you who haven't met her, this is Laura Smead, who is now our CPA planner as of January. And she's had CPA experience in the past and it's really hit the ground running. So we're very pleased.
All
Okay,
right, is everybody
Yeah.
seeing this? I can try to make it a little bigger.
okay. So you can see that the total appropriations in the first motion are the expected annual revenue. This revenue is an estimation of what we will get. And we don't actually, with the exception of the administrative piece of our motion, which is coming up next, we don't actually spend this money in the next year. It's much easier for CPA to go through a procedure where we spend what we have. And so that's what we will be doing in the third motion. We've already collected it, we know what it is, and we can spend it. In this case, we don't really know because it's an estimation of what we will actually get, especially when it comes to the match. The match depends upon the real estate transactions through the registries. And that it varies from year to year. And it's been more disappointing in the past 2 years than it has the first year we joined, which is why the revenue is down. But it, can't tell if it's gonna go up or not, and that's a state scheme. Could you go down to the next, the second motion? So this is the motion that we will expend we will actually pay, use next year for our administrative expenses. That's our staff, consultants we have, dues for the statewide tech organization, which provides us a lot of technical assistance, et cetera. So if we don't spend it all, it goes back into the fund, back into the unallocated budget reserve. Unlike the town's money, which goes to free cash, ours does not. CPA keeps the money. And go down to the third bucket, which is the third motion, is the one sometimes they're listed twice because the money comes from either the unallocated budget reserve or in the instance of housing, for instance, it comes from the community housing budget reserve. So that goes on throughout. That's where we get our three motions from. And this has been the pattern in the past 2 years, and this is the third year that we're doing it in this way. I'll say one more thing about having this voted as one motion and entire thing, and that is that the moderator made the decision the first year that we had a number of grants that year, and he wanted them to be voted as one because of the time constraints, using the electronic voting system, et cetera. And he didn't feel that most of them were controversial. There was a motion to divide the question. That motion was not accepted by the body of town meeting. And in fact, there were only a relative handful of votes that voted no on one project. So it was not, it was really an overwhelmingly positive vote for CPA in its entirety. And last year, there was less controversy about it, any of the projects, and they were all voted in one motion. So, and that's the moderator's decision. But town meeting can weigh in by asking for a divided question, and then that is put to a vote of town meeting, and it could pass and it could fail, and we would have to abide by that.
Dennis, I wanted to make one quick comment.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead, David.
So Carol, in her report, mentioned some millions of dollars that's not accounted for. So I wanted to mention to the committee that the Community Preservation Act law says that the Community Preservation Committee shall recommend for appropriation or reserve for a future appropriation. We have money that has not been recommended for appropriation at this point. As Nancy said, we're not looking to spend every last dollar every year. So, we take the projects we have and the ones that the committee finds have merit, and we fund them. And if that's not all the money available, fine. We're hoping that will be applications for other projects that do have the merit, and then we can appropriate the money at that time. So it's unlike the town, where unspent money at the end of the year goes back to the Department of Revenue, becomes certified as free cash, and that the town meeting then appropriates. In this case, it's a rolling fund, like a reserve, and all of the money that's collected from the surcharge, that's matched and contributed by the Community Preservation Trust Fund of the state, and the amount of money we're getting from interest. Once it's in the accounts, reserve accounts, it continues to be available for projects as they come along. And I think that sometimes it's important to see that the dynamics of of this particular program in Brookline is a bit different from other the general general financial plan of the town. Thank you.
I'd like to make actually one more comment before Laura goes, and which I forgot to say before. One of the things that's been expressed by the open space community is that, you know, they would like to see us fund a purchase of land for open space. And certainly the committee is willing to do that. But in order to do that, we have to have the funds on reserve. And there's no, the interest was in having a community, an open space trust. But that requires a home rule petition. There is no mechanism in the state for trusts other than the housing trust, which we have, and the conservation trust, which we have. But conservation is different from open space. So if we have money on hand, which has not been spent for other things, and a project comes up, a purchase of land for a park, or just as open space, or for recreation, or for any other purpose, we could use that money for that purpose. I'm sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Sure. So the first comment I want to make is to how I interpreted Carol's question, which is that the estimated revenue for fiscal 27 in the warrant article is listed as 3.9 million, and a slide that we presented to them shows an estimated revenue for fiscal year 27 as 4.12 million. And that's simply, I think, a product of the fact that the fiscal year 27 revenue is a little bit of a moving target. It's an estimate. And when we did the warrant article, we were using our best estimate at that time in January, February, when we were drafting the warrant article. And then right before going before the advisory committee subcommittee, you know, we wanted to make sure that they had all of the latest information. And so we're always trying to give the latest projection. The next thing I would point out that I think is valuable is a slide that we presented to the select board. So because I totally understand the concern around state match and things like that. The other comment I would say about state matches going down is in 2022, you know, you adopted it in 2021. In 2022, the state match was 0, and the next year was $1 million. So I think also when you first join CPA, there's a little bit of a lag, a little bit of a catch up that the state does for communities just joining. So if you think about that $1 million as split across the 2 years, 1 year 0, 1 year's $1 million, it's really about 500,000 plus minus, actually a little bit more than 500,000 every year. So it comes out to be about the same. On this is kind of what we illustrated as the projects. The thing I would like to highlight is that CPA funds have been 16.5 million. This is including if everything gets voted on this year. And of that, so it's a total of actually about 32 million that's been invested in the community or will be invested in the community. Almost half of that is being leveraged from outside funds, either state like HILAP dollars or third-party funds from the various religious institutions that are having historic preservation. There's lots of actually, well, the state has been about 500,000 a year. It's really being leveraged, millions of outside dollars in addition to the CPA funds. And the other point I would make is that the CPAC has chosen to fund about 99, this comes out to be about 99%. If it's a town project, CPA has been funding the entirety of that project budget. If it's a third-party project, it comes out to be more like less than half. Usually those third-party projects are bringing significant money to the table to those projects. And I think that's all of the points that I wanted to make on that. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, I'm good.
So, thank you.
Follow up then. a question?
Yeah, can I ask you one question, Carol, before I forget, which
Sure.
is, did the subcommittee take 3 votes or just 2?
We took one vote for I think we ended up taking one vote for everything is the way.
Okay, so that'll just affect how we do the motions later. That's fine. I mean, I know your recommendation. Go ahead.
So I guess my question is, since you are appropriating an estimated revenue, and I'm assuming that the actual appropriations will get adjusted up or down by the 10%, 10%, 10%, 5% rule. Instead of giving us Laura, you correctly interpreted my question. You're missing $186,000 that you projected to us as revenue that isn't in your appropriations that you put before town meeting. So, yes, David, that she understood it correctly. And so the question is, shouldn't you make a statement as to what happens if there's any overages or any shortfalls? Because
it's not a shortfall. I mean, that's 186,000.
If for some reason the revenues fall short of your projections, I'm just leaving it as a hypothetical possibility.
Then we have less money.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, you can't appropriate it, you don't have the money to.
But we're only appropriating what comes in and what goes into the various buckets.
And we're
not
actually
spending it except for the administrative part, the 196,000. That's the only thing of fiscal year 27 money.
Right, I get that.
Spending next year.
So I'm just wondering why we just don't do it as a straight percentage instead of numbers. That's all.
Yeah.
Since
we have a substantial amount of money in our reserves that we have not recommended for.
No, David, I'm only talking about fiscal year 27 revenues, not what's in the reserves already.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm. Okay. Just a point as to how we deal with it from a, I guess, accounting standpoint. But Melissa isn't here tonight, or Charlie Young, so I guess we'll just live with it.
I think if there was a major concern, we would have another, fall article or some form of budget amendment later on to reallocate funds from one fund to another. Are there questions or comments from the committee about either the revenues or the proposed expenditures?
Neil Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. And thank you to the committee. I want to make a comment first about pilots, a general pilot comment first. We talk about pilots a lot in the context of those who don't pay pilots, the not-for-profits in Brookline, are somehow characterized as deadbeats. I'm not sure that's ever been said, but there's surely an undercurrent. And maybe that's true of some not-for-profits, but there are other not-for-profits that are thinly funded and actually perform an important community mission. And I'm not sure that part of their community mission includes sacrificing the mission in order to beef up pilots to the town. In that context, I'm wary, and I think pilots perhaps should be criteria for grants in the future, but I'm wary that, for example, someone who otherwise would be paying us a pilot of, say, $100,000 and comes across a renovation project of $1 million, might only need 900,000 if they weren't paying us the pilot. So I think you get the point, and I don't need to take it further. I'd be careful. The other point, so controversy, I believe, is not the only criteria. And I don't suggest that we vote on every grant because it's overkill. But I will suggest that we have town meeting members who are passionate about housing. We have town meeting members who are passionate about preservation and passionate about green space and whatever else, whatever other buckets we have. I think that both the committee and town meeting does itself a disservice by not voting at least by category. I think the voters are entitled to know which town meeting members are supportive of what, rather than an aggregate vote where, what does it mean to vote no when you've got X 4 different categories? And what do we know about those individual town meeting members and their records? I've introduced lots of non-controversial warrant articles with a smattering of no votes. And I think that those no votes are as meaningful as the yes votes. And I'm thinking that this advisory committee in the broad categories ought to recommend dividing the question so that we can know in fact where the passions of the various voting town meeting members lie, and whether in fact there's for the benefit of the voters and for the benefit of the committee, because I think it would inform the committee as to where the passion of town meeting lies in terms of how you make future allocations.
Thank you, Elisa.
Oh, well, I agree with the breaking down the vote by categories. I'm not sure that it's necessarily, well, I'll pass on that. The steeple, I am assuming that there's other funding going to the renovation. Is that
Yes.
from church, and what's the?
Right, our allocation, our grant allocation is 800,000, but it's a $2.9 million project. So they are raising $2.1 million outside of the town, and the CPA money for their preservation project. It's significant. The steeple is crumbling. It's a safety hazard. In addition to which, United Parish provides a huge community benefit. It has many programs in there, but most notably the food bank, and that's very important in the town, I think.
Have we thought of also for pilots just doing in kind? I mean, for example, the church, if it doesn't have any money, can it provide space for town purposes?
We've never categorized that as an in-kind contribution. We have noted that all of those projects, the religious institution projects that we funded, plus any other projects of that ilk, have been, we look at the community benefit as an important thing that we want to understand. And we want those, in our plan, it's important that they do those community benefits in order to get money from CPA, and they all do. And they have been doing them for, 50 years. So it's not as if they're doing it on the side because they want the money. It has nothing to do with that, really. They're very community minded. All three of the religious institutions that we have funded for repairs of the preservation of their dome or their steeples have been, very community minded. So we haven't monetized that, but I'm sure if we did monetize it, it would add considerably to their contribution to the town. When you think about the food pantry and the space that it's consuming in the United Parish Church on a regular basis, it's pretty significant. So we have not monetized that, and that's not part of the $15.9 million that we're talking about when we talk about having leveraged. But it's a good point that they are providing a huge amount of space and other resources to the community. And, that maybe that could be considered part of the pilot. I will say that I looked at I took a quick look at the law which enables these pilot programs, and it talks about voluntary payments. So I'm not sure that, and I haven't done the research, so I don't know. But I plan to look into it and ask town council to look into it as well. Whether if we require them to participate, that is not in accordance with the statute. So
Right. And the other thing is, I didn't quite understand the land purchase option that you were discussing, that if the town was thinking of purchasing land, you could see if there's funding available in the reserve fund.
well, the unallocated budget reserve of the CPA has some funds which we have not expended to date. And we
Right.
don't have to turn them over. We keep them. And we funded all of the projects that were eligible and had submitted to us. And, you know, we were very happy to have been able to do that and still have those funds left over for the possibility that there might be a purchase of land to convert to a park. And that would be a perfect use for CPA money or recreation, to convert to recreational land. So, you know, it's just a pie in the sky. It's a wish. It's on the wish list. It's on the wish list of many people in the community. And the fact that we have these reserves now means that we could help. We may not be able to fund the whole thing. We may need to rely on some more town money. I don't know. We have no idea what the conditions will be. But it's always good to have something in your back pocket if you wish to do that kind of thing.
So you're not just limiting it, that's not the only option for land purchase.
Oh, no.
It's just
no.
in that particular instance, we have money in the reserve, and hey, if someone has a great idea, yeah, okay, thank you.
Janet.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Harry. So I have a different perspective on town meeting's role with the CPA and how to vote it. So having gone through the very first year with you, I know how hard you work to evaluate projects that can be before the CPA committee. And I think I'd be more inclined to want you to reach out to town meeting members to let them know when your meetings are, so that when people do have an interest in the town, that they're aware of the different projects that are coming, you know, for preservation, for instance, or we combined two buckets, open space and recreation, we combined into one bucket, and housing. So that I think might be a better way. I think the issue at town meeting was about a particular project and wanting that separated. So I think the time to do it is really earlier on in the process. You hold lots of meetings, and that would be a good time for you to get feedback and information, I think, from the community. So that's one thing. So Nancy, you mentioned that there's and also we already know that 10% has to go into each bucket. That's
Correct.
baseline.
We can spend more from the unallocated budget reserve, but we have to spend at least 10% on each.
Right, so at least we have a baseline that we know of is in every category, which is helpful. So my question though is something that, I don't know if I heard this correctly, about the 195, the 5% that goes towards administration, said administration and consulting. And I'm just wondering if this committee is actually using money to hire consultants.
Well, the first years we did have the assistance of Jen Goldson, who is a consultant to many different communities in the state. She actually worked in Brookline's planning department a number of years ago. And she is very capable and helped us enormously to draw up a plan, a CPA plan, which we have referred you to before. We're very happy with that. But sometimes there comes an issue with a particular applicant, and we haven't encountered that situation before. And we need the assistance of someone who has deep knowledge. And Jen does. And I'm not saying she'd be the only one, but we have occasionally hired her to give us some perspective on a particular applicant or a set of applicants. And you know, it hasn't been a lot of money, but that is one of the permissible uses for the money. The other use that we make on a regular basis is a dues to the statewide organization, which provides us with enormous technical assistance, and as well as other communities in the state. And of course, the salary and benefits for our planner. But from year to year, it varies very much. And I don't think this year we had very little consultant expense, but we don't never know what year we're going to need more. So we do program the 5%, which is what we're allowed to do by statute. And if we know that if we don't spend it, we don't lose it. It goes back into the unbudgeted, unallocated budget reserve. And so we always keep it. It enhances our financial position, and that's all.
Thank you, Nancy. That's very helpful.
Linda Olson-Pelkey.
Thank you, Harry. So one question I had was on the BHA projects. There's some entity matching the funds. I wasn't familiar with the acronym. Could you tell me what that is?
It's called HILAP. Now you're asking me.
Yeah.
It's a state grant, which is designed to be spent on the BHA state projects, of which we have several in the town. And up to date, you know, in the past, very little money was spent on those projects, which is why we need to do preservation of roofs and windows, etc. And
So that's great. It's a way of getting state funding
yes, a
for
few
it.
years ago, the legislature put money into that fund, but they're not just releasing the money. They seem to want to do it as matches to our, but they've been very favorable. There are 7 roofs at Egmont. We did 2 of them, and the rest were funded by the state. So it's been a very good. We're estimating 1.5 match this next year, but it could be more, and that would be great.
Yeah, for the record, it stands for High Leverage Asset Preservation Program for local government.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks. Does the committee consider a standardized percentage to hold over, or is it all just fungible depending on what you have in front of you? Like, are you thinking about maybe we should try to build up the reserve and we're going to put aside some percentage or not? Do you think of that?
We don't really set it out in the beginning
Just set
to
it
do
aside.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's happened over the past few years that we've been in business, and now we do have that reserve. And we're not looking to spend it on a tiny project. We're looking to spend it on a kind of big project that the town needs. Open space and recreation has been something that lots of people have mentioned as a great need in the town. I mean, all of the areas are great needs. I mean, housing and historic preservation as well. But housing, we've spent the most money. I think we're up to about this, if we include this year's allocation, I think 56% of our money has gone to housing. Yeah.
Well, that was my next comment, is about the open space. And you guys might remember when Melissa was here and we were going over the enterprise funds, she did talk about the potential of setting up some kind of enterprise fund for open space. And honestly, if we can't figure out how to do this, that's why I voted for the CPA. So I want to see some money go to some open space at some point. So I hope we can all get behind that. And then the thing about giving money to the trust fund, the Housing Trust Fund. Further on down the line, I predict we will have passed this change that's coming up tonight. We're going to discuss about contributions instead of on-site units, contributions of cash to the Housing Trust Fund versus on-site units. And we have this, and we still have the waterfall of the free cash. And I would like somebody to do some kind of analysis that shows us the town contribution to the Housing Trust Fund over time, and, you know, maybe excluding the inclusionary zoning contributions because they're so variable. But I'm asking that question because I think it's an important question for the town. If we have alternative sources that are consistently going to the trust fund through the CPA, then do we really need to dedicate it out of our free cash and other areas, especially now that we're so budget constrained? So I didn't hear that from the subcommittee. So no one has really done this historic look back, as far as I know. Is that correct?
The subcommittee asked the question about that's the MOU that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
As to, and I think that should be part of the assessment for the CPA. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense, Linda, about doing it from the Housing Trust Fund perspective. And the waterfall is a financial policy.
Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
like first comes the MOU.
Yeah.
You know, one
Okay.
thing about CPA is that one of the tenets sort of it is that it's not there to replace town money. It's there to augment the money that's spent on these three areas: affordable housing, open space and recreation, and historic preservation. So, you know, I think there's a great need in all three, and I would hate to see the town back away from its commitments to the housing trust, because I think that's very important. I'm also cognizant of the fact that if the Chestnut Hill Office Park goes through, there is likely to be a large payment to the Affordable Housing Trust, which is great. To date, the Affordable Housing Trust, the lane that they're in is to create more affordable housing. The CPA, while we did make an initial grant of $3.75 million to the Walnut High project, because we had the money at that time, the other monies that we've spent on housing have gone into the preservation of our current units. Because our current units are really not, I mean, you know, I hate to say it, but they're not really standard of what we would like to see in Brookline. And I took a tour a number of years ago. You've all heard this, and you know, I was shocked at the condition. So, you know, the CPA has carved out for itself this lane of preserving and making better the units that we have, and in that way supporting the tenants, the affordable housing tenants that we have. They won't have leaking into their apartments from a leaky roof. They won't have windows that are causing them to freeze in the winter or expend a lot of money on energy costs, etc. So that's what we've done. I think it's an important role. I think we owe everyone under our care a duty, a standard, a higher standard of living as best as we can make it. And so I'm
No,
pleased that we're
I'm
doing
not
that.
questioning those grants, Nancy. I'm just talking about the straight up giving cash to the Housing Trust Fund and just combining, trying to look holistically at what is the town doing there, and is it, you know, it's just worth knowing the information to make a decision policy wise.
Right. Well, the CPA looks at that every year. This year, the Affordable Housing Trust stepped in to one of our projects with BCDC because they discovered some unanticipated costs, and the Affordable Housing Trust covered those. And the CPA felt that we should also make some contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust because of that. So we did. You know, I think it's, you know, I don't necessarily see us putting money into the Affordable Housing Trust on a regular basis, as they are involved in the creation and they're much bigger than we are. We only have, you know, a third, theoretically, of $4 million a year to spend. So because we have two other categories to spend, it, you know, it doesn't always work out quite evenly because things come up and you have different projects and they cost different amounts. But if you think about it that way, you realize that the lane we're in, which is preservation of the existing units, is a very important one, and it's doable for given our budget constraints.
Dennis, I wanted to make a little bit of a comment on that. Linda, yes, I think we're we're just speaking to the choir on this, and we're, as Carol has mentioned, we're doing it's actually a framework rather than a memorandum of understanding, because we already using that term for something else. And anything that we put into the Housing Trust Fund needs to be explained in exactly the way that you're indicating. We need to have an overview that need to show where this is playing a role, in addition to the free cash and all the rest of it. How does it fit into the picture overall? And so we're asking those kinds of questions, and we asked them this year for the application they made, and they provided a lot of additional information, and we expect in future years that a lot of this will be addressed, and of course it'll all be public, and I think you may find it interesting, or at least we'll find it interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. David, you had
Put me on the list.
Carlos. You're off the list.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I had a two-finger about HILAP. It's a fund that sits within the Executive Office of Housing and Community Development. And it's specifically a high leverage. It's to incentivize local matches. So, I have two sort of areas of interest with CPA. First, let me just stop and say I think the committee is doing wonderful work. I think their level of care, transparency, structure really has done a wonderful job in a very short period of time. So I also am a huge fan of the focus that it gives our community, and I happily pay the 1%. But I have two areas of real interest. One is of this area of leverage. And I actually reached out to Nancy and to Ben Stone, the director of the Housing Authority, today to clarify the HILAP contribution. And Ben was able to provide the information that the HILAP match that they were able to achieve is at the very limit of these discretionary funds, which is 2.5%, 2.5 times match. So the HLC is putting in 2.5 times from HILAP of what our CPA grant is. So that's great. And you've done a lot of projects that have had, as an architect, have had HILAP funds in them. It's very rare to get 2.5% out of HLC, but 2.5 times multiplier out of HLC. So that was good work on both the Housing Authority's part and the committee's part. I do have to say that Nancy, you undoubtedly have gone a lot deeper into what preservation means in the context of the title of the act, Community Preservation Act. The reality of HLC supported, state supported public housing is that historically communities did not pay for window and roof replacement projects. These were not locally supported projects. HLC paid for them. It's there. And so I'm ambivalent. Well, I think that these are vital projects for the veterans housing and for these two sites. I sort of mourn the fact that that's where we're putting our CPA funds, because it didn't used to be the case, right? They used to be able to get those monies straight from the state without the local match. So I'm at least reassured by this high level of the 2.5 multiplier. I'm more comfortable with contributing to the BCDC project for preservation because they really don't have the funding sources, and their building was in terrible shape and really needed to be fixed up, and so that seems straight ahead about preservation. But at a high level, I really feel that the meaning of preservation here isn't quite so literal, and as to only be focused on existing units, and it's about preserving our community at large. And so I really do support the creative side of what these funds can be used for, including acquisition of open space and doing the kind of work that the Affordable Housing Trust does, which is to leverage creation of new affordable units, which clearly is part of the mission of CPA, because if you actually read into the details of what they can and can't fund, if you take it literally, they say that you can fix up only projects that were originally built with CPA money. So the kind of things like roof and, I mean, there are communities that really are only comfortable putting funds into roof replacement and window replacement projects on units that were created with CPA money and would not fund projects like these ones that are very worthy projects that were funded. From the affordable housing architect, sorry to go into quite so far down into the weeds, but that's the news from this corner.
Thank you. Dennis, I think we're ready for a motion.
A couple of motions, I think. I think we should pattern it after the votes that are listed in the original warrant. But are the numbers that are published with our published in the warrant the same, Carol, as what was voted by the subcommittee? Is it 3,934 and then one, and then, okay, great. So I think we need three motions. One is the to appropriate the amounts from the annual revenues as per warrant Article 9 in the amount of $3,934,000. Then a second motion to appropriate the $196,700 from the revenues to the administrative expensive accounts. And then the third one is to appropriate for the individual grants. And
Dennis, the 3,934 includes the administrative money. I have to back that out.
Well, according to what's written in here,
I'm looking at what I copied from the slides.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what was submitted in warrant Article 9, which says the first appropriation doesn't include 196,700.
Check the math.
I think what happens, excuse me, but what happens is that we will fund the 10% reserves, and the rest of the money that comes in for CPA will go into the unallocated budget reserve, and the motion for the 27 appropriation for the 196 administrative will come out of that unallocated budget reserve into an administrative. We've done it this way. This is this will be the third year. It's the same pattern. So that's how it works.
Right. So I still think we need those three votes, because that's how we've done it in the past. I just want to make sure the numbers
one other
are
comment?
correct.
The third motion which is the grants, will come from monies that we have already collected. So that money is sitting in our budget reserves and ready to be spent. It's not money that we anticipate getting in fiscal year 27, even though it's being appropriated in fiscal year 27.
So
for spending purposes.
Yes.
So Dennis, if we're going to do it as three votes with the administrative separately, then the first vote is for $3,737,300.
Okay. Just tell me that again, as I,
It's 3,737,300.
Harry.
yes, because, okay, because that total appropriations number that appears that's printed in the warrant includes the next item down below. Okay. Correct. All right.
Right.
Dennis,
Okay. Yes.
before we vote, Neil has a question, comment.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so what I want to move, and tell me what the appropriate time is. And I'm not suggesting that I'm opposed to any, that I don't accept the recommendation of the subcommittee or CPAC. But I do want to move that we recommend dividing the question by category for the reasons
Right.
that I explained before.
Right. So, I mean, so the appropriate time to do that will be when we get to the motion on the grants, which will be our third motion. But if you're going to divide the question, you should propose a specific division, items 1, 3, 7, 2, 4, whatever. So you have 5 minutes before we get to that part of the vote to recommend how you want to cleave it.
Can somebody do that for me? Who can
Yeah.
get it right?
It's done in the write-up, Neil. We've divided it by community housing, historic preservation, and open space.
Right,
Okay.
those three categories.
Okay, so when we get there, and are they some, or do we have the sums also
Yes.
pulled out, Carol? Great,
Yes.
perfect. Then let's do that. Let's start with the motion for appropriation of $3,737,300 in fiscal year 27 CPA fund revenues as described in warrant article 9. Just to be safe, we should have somebody make that motion and second it because it's not coming directly from the subcommittee because we changed it slightly in terms of the language.
I'll move it. So moved.
Okay.
Second,
All right, so let's vote on that.
Is this the one
Michael,
that Neil wants to divide?
no, this is the revenues. Then we're gonna do another
okay,
appropriation of revenues,
okay.
and then we're gonna go to the grants.
Okay, okay.
Michael,
Yes.
Harry B,
Yes.
Elise,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Harry F,
yes,
David Mark,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Janice,
Yes.
Brian,
yes,
Alec,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Donnell,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Fran,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Carlos,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
All right, so 23-0 to 0. We're going to recommend that appropriation. Then the second motion, which someone will also have to make, is to appropriate the $196,700 from the preservation fund revenues to the administrative expenses account for fiscal year 27 administrative expenses.
So moved.
Okay, is anybody planning on voting differently on this than they voted on the first one? Okay, that also passes. So now, Neil, if you and Carol can describe 2 or 3 or 4, however many motions it is, I think it's just as reasonable for us to just vote them independently than to go through a formal process of doing a divided question, because we were just recommending recommendation on each of these items anyway.
I think though that we need a recommendation to town meeting that to divide the question because town meeting will take up that motion.
Sure. Let me just move this. So recommend dividing the question. And how many categories is it?
3.
Great. We
So
call
that's,
the 3 major categories.
and Carol, can you name those?
It's community housing, historic preservation, and open space and recreation.
All right. So this is Neil's motion to recommend dividing the question into 3 major categories. So let's, is there any debate on this topic? All right, Michael,
Yes.
Harry,
No,
I'll be right there, John.
Elise,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Harry F,
Yes.
David Mark,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Kelly,
No.
Elisa,
I had second thoughts. No.
Janice,
No.
Brian,
No.
Alec,
No.
Carol,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Donnell,
Yes.
Linda,
No.
Fran,
No.
David,
No.
Carlos,
Yes.
Margaret.
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No.
No, okay. Lee.
Yes.
All right, so 14 to 10 to 0, our recommendation is favorable action on dividing the question. So Carol, can you give me 3
Sure. So,
motions?
to spend $1,976,947 on community housing grants.
Community housing grants as described in warrant article 9. Okay, and what's the second one?
$1,665,398 on historic preservation grants.
Okay, and then the last one is?
430,000 on open space and recreation grants.
Open space. Okay,
Can I ask
so
a quick
Yes.
question? My recollection is that there's some minimum requirement for the CPA money in each of these categories. Is that, am I misremembering?
that's what we did in the first motion. There was
No.
No, we didn't. No, I think we have to revote this separation because I think it's against state law.
That's my point.
In
It
terms
seems
of
to
the
me
grants, I
seems to
thought
me
it
that,
was
like, isn't 10% supposed to go to housing and 10%?
10% went to the reserves for housing.
Yeah, 10%
Excuse
was
me.
allocated from the revenues
Yeah.
already
I think,
to those categories.
I'm sorry, Dennis, could I speak for a second?
Go ahead.
I think it would be, one of the things that we've done in our motion is we've described the exact amount of money that comes out of the housing reserve and for housing and the money that comes out of the unallocated budget reserve for housing. So you're going to have to incorporate all that. My suggestion is that you can say you would like the question to be divided into the 3 categories at town meeting, but that for the purposes of moving the projects forward, you're willing to, because otherwise we're going to have to spend some time going over exactly which allocation is what. As we did in the motion, you'll see it in if you look at it. Probably each project, I don't remember exactly, but may have 2 allocations. Because one will come from the budget reserve for that particular category, and another will come from the unallocated budget reserve. So I think
I
it's
see that.
cleaner. It's cleaner to do the whole thing as a question of whether you're willing to fund all of those projects, which you all have said you're willing to do. But make it also a motion to town meeting that the question be divided into the 3 categories. And then we can provide that information that's accurate and meets the requirement of the motion if we
All
need
right.
to have that. But we
Thank you. I
don't
think
we
that's-
don't have that today.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that is a good advice because I'm reading through the description here. So yeah, Neil, I think we're going to have to take either table this until we have the full motion written up, or take an aggregate vote with the recommendation that these be split at town meeting.
So
It's pretty easy to do, because like for community housing, there's only a small portion that comes out of.
Right, but we still have to do that wordsmithing tonight to have the motion correct,
Okay.
is what I'm saying. And I don't plan to do that.
Fine.
Dennis, if I might.
Yeah.
We have voted on on dividing. So that question is behind us. We're down now to the technical dollars of the motion, which I think is easy enough for us to consider. We can table that part and consider it and just vote. It's not going to take very much time at a later meeting. It allows us to get the actual motion into the combined reports rather than have a motion to divide and then have a confused town meeting as to what those amounts might be. I think it's important that we understand the motion that we're recommending and get it into the combined reports so that it is in the hands of town meeting members.
I'm not objecting
I know.
getting the motion to the combined reports. I'm just saying I don't have a motion for us tonight to vote on that is defensible.
I don't think it takes us very much time. The next time we can bring it back on the agenda.
Fran,
Is it too late to make a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, so with all due respect to Neil, I don't think these things should be separated because the committee has spent an awful lot of time on it and vetted all these things. And what happened last time is someone was objecting to it was for a church and somebody was objecting for that. And I don't really think we want to waste time on town meeting doing that because in the end, everyone votes for it. The second thing, in talking to my colleagues on either side, there was confusion of myself, not on the issue. There was confusion as to what they were voting on. And is it possible, they're not sure they voted the way they would have if they understood the question. Is it possible to re-vote?
How about we first get the questions so we can clarify what the issue is?
Can I respond to the first comment?
Yeah, go ahead. And I didn't understand the last thing that Fran said. So go ahead, Neil.
All right, well, I want to respond to the first thing that Fran said, right? I appreciate as much as anyone the hard work of the committee. It's not the point. The committee is not the appropriating authority. The appropriating authority is town meeting. And they worked hard and we don't need to do anything, would apply to the 6th floor and their budget proposal. And we don't do that. It's just not where the authority lies. We have the opportunity to vet it. We've done that through the subcommittee, and the subcommittee is recommending no changes. I contend, as I said before, that both the subcommittee and the voters are entitled to know where the appetite of individual town meeting members are, and that there has been no controversy in the past is not true. I support it if I didn't move it, to divide the question before. I spoke against a particular allocation for a reason, and I lost that vote at town meeting, so be it. But I brought it. And I'll go back, and I said this the first time, it's not the moderator's job to tell that town meeting that we shouldn't spend the time on things that town meeting may think are important to town meeting.
So I am putting myself on the list because I have felt very strongly about this for the past 3 or 4 years. To me, these are like CIP items. We go through the CIP at town meeting, and anyone who wants a vote on a separate CIP item gets it. And when Neil was behind the motion a couple of years ago to divide the question, I agreed with him. And I have voted against all the CPA funding for the past couple of years because I don't like the fact that we don't get to vote on the individual items. And that was a measure of partly how the warrant article was put together. And the fact that town meeting, when we actually did put a vote to it, did not vote to divide the question. I don't think it's a good use of our time tonight to be going back and forth on this, and I'm gonna move to table.
Dennis, can I suggest
Yep.
that we could just vote the 9 grants separately and it would take less time?
If you have motion, that's what I was asking for. We actually need motions.
Yes, I
Um,
mean, it's written right here. I mean, it's just not gonna be in the $3. It'll be. Let's try it this way. So the first one is it's warrant article 9, appropriation 6 to the Brookline Housing Authority and Trustman Apartments for $380,230
and it's but it has to be.
from the unallocated budget reserve.
Correct. What's the amount again? I'm sorry. It's gonna take me a second.
$380,230.
Dennis, excuse me, could
Yes,
we ask Laura to put up the, I think she has the warrant article. She could put it up, because in several of the cases of the grants, they come out of 2 different buckets.
right. And
So
Carol
I-
is gonna describe that. Are you saying that
Yeah.
Carol just described it improperly? Because that's.
I don't know. I
No,
don't
I,
have it in
I, I'm just reading from the warrant article, Nancy.
Okay.
The next one is Brookline Housing Authority. Next grant is Brookline Housing Authority of Trustman Apartments for roof replacement in the amount of $798,400 from the Community Housing Budget Reserve.
So actually, I have a better idea, which is we move on to starting our discussion of the next topic while we prepare these individual motions that we can vote on later in this meeting, rather than you and I talking and wasting 10 or 15 minutes
I'll
of
email
people's
them to
time.
you. Is that the best way?
Email them to me. I'll put them into the spreadsheet and we'll come back to
Okay.
to the vote if there's no objection. Let's move on to it.
Do you want to take other comments on this, or do you want to move on to other articles?
If there are more comments about the overall process, sure, but if we're gonna have, if we have votes to take and we already decided to divide the question, what else is there to discuss?
So I'm not sure, but I have Fran, Elisa, Janice, and Carl.
Okay,
So we'll start with Fran and hope she has something
I'll be
pertinent to
quick.
say.
My understanding of the CPA is you have the separate bins and the money has to be divided amongst them. So if you get in the position of voting down one bin versus another, does that mess up the law? And the second thing, I'm not saying that with regard to Neil's comment that town meeting can't discuss it. I'm saying that there was always the opportunity to take one of those items out of the group to discuss if people wanted to discuss it.
Yeah, no, agreed. And
So why have it as 3 groups that you then have to vote on 3 times and take 3 things out?
because as I explained, it is the advisory committee's recommendation. And I think that it is worth having on the record
But
the motion that I made and the votes accordingly. And that doesn't leave, it doesn't preclude town meeting members from further dividing the question if it's further divisible. The answer is sure. I could not make the motion and any town meeting member could move the exact same motion at town meeting. And I'm moving that as a recommendation of the advisory committee.
Thank you. Lisa,
So I'm not sure I can talk substantively. I mean, that was I think a procedural question that Fran asked. But I think dividing up by each individual item, which is what Harry said, and then voting on those would at least give an indication of why you are voting for or against something. But if you divide it up among 3 different lots, maybe someone's voting against the historic preservation because they don't want to fund a church project. But you're not going to know what the reason is. So to draw any conclusions based on those 3 lump sum items, I think would be the wrong way to go.
Right. So it seems to me that what we're debating is the motion that we already voted.
Right, that's
and
what I'm-
approved, right? And I don't have a problem with finding a better, more efficient, more pragmatic solution. Don't look at me, you have to look at him.
Yeah, I know. I'm listening.
Dennis, may I make another point? I'm sorry.
Hang on, let's go through the other questions and comments that are coming from the advisory committee members, and we'll go back to you.
Janice,
So Harry, the way you describe it, I have no problem with. But as you know, when you're talking about transparency, a bucket is not transparent, and some of the items are in more than one bucket. So it makes much more sense if you're going to vote on items, but not vote on buckets, because buckets are not transparent.
thank you. Collins,
On the same vein, I wonder what happens also if when you vote a certain number of items and you go below the 10% for
Right.
that
Well, that's what.
section, which is what would happen, I understand, from the bucket. So there needs to be some clarification. If the CPA, if the law just says the CPA has to present this and then town meeting can vote whatever they want, or if the law says that you have to spend it the way that it says.
thank you. Elise,
By the way, we vote the school budget as a single line item.
Just saying.
By law.
Because we have.
Well, so
Elise,
given what everybody has said tonight, I have 2 questions. One is, can I change my vote? And 2, if I can't, can we do a reconsideration? Can I move to reconsider? Yes, you can, because you're on
Yes.
the telling side.
Yes. Yes, you can. I suggest we debate the
Need more time to.
the meta issue much longer rather than debating the actual substance.
Dennis,
Sorry.
Yes,
how many items are there total?
I'm sorry, what?
9. There's 9.
There are 9 items total. Given that Carol is about to send me separately 9 individual.
You got a few more
votes.
minutes.
Well, no. I evidently we have all night. It would not be out of the realm of possibility for someone such as Elise to move reconsideration of our previous vote, to recommend dividing the question into 9 categories, 1 for each of the items, and vote them separately. That's fine. I suspect that would pass overwhelmingly given the conversation at this point.
Carol, you had a comment?
I just want to make a clarification, the way I hear the 10%. We satisfy the 10% into each of the categories when we allocate into 10% of each year's revenues into the 3 separate reserve funds for each of those
Right.
categories.
That's how we've done it every year up
Right,
until now.
but-
We've never had a discussion about the grant side of things.
And so however, in any single year, whatever the percentage of grants are among the 3 categories doesn't really matter because we always are funding from our already appropriately apportioned reserve funds.
That is my understanding as well. That's what I tried to say, 20 minutes ago, that when we satisfied the 10% constraint with our first vote, as I understand it.
That's how,
So are you saying that we've already put it in the bucket, we just haven't spent it?
Yeah.
Yes, because you don't have to spend out of each bucket each year, as I understood it. You have to allocate into each bucket each year.
10%.
So Dennis, what
What does that mean?
what motion are we looking at first, second, third, or whatever?
Reconsider
Well,
it.
I think we should be, reconsidering the question of whether we're splitting the vote into three categories and replacing that with the with dividing the question into 9 categories.
Dennis, it's actually 8 categories because there are 8 grants.
Okay, I was just
And
listening to Carol.
okay, but I just want to make, before you continue with the 9, for the record, I just want to clarify that there are 8 projects.
Why is it one?
And they may consume more than 1 line in the warrant article, and that's because we are allocating some of them have money from from the 10% bucket, and others have, and plus money from the unallocated budget reserve, and we need to demonstrate that in the warrant article. But if that's the case, they should be considered together as one item. Otherwise, what the advisory committee is doing, or opening itself up to the possibility of doing, is not, you have a choice, and town meeting has a choice. You approve or you deny, but you can't increase the budget in any way, and you can, it's better practice not to decrease it either. It's better to just, if you don't like it, then deny it. If you do like it, approve it. But when it's in 2 categories, and you approve one and you don't approve the other, that presents a problem, on the same project.
Nancy, because even like, say, housing, the BHA at Trustman, you're bringing the money in from 2 different reserves, but they're both in housing.
Yes.
They'll be in the same category. The same is true about the open space and recreation.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
but
fine.
not if we split it into 9 separate motions, Carol.
Why would we be separating it into separations?
Oh, okay, well, I'll send it to you and you can figure out how you want to do it. Okay. Well, I'm writing them up as 3 categories with sub motions in them, with each one broken out.
Well, I would appreciate that if there's sub motions, that at least that the motion on any one project encompass both amounts from the unallocated and the budget reserve, because that will make it less complicated.
I'm
Okay,
just
hey, Harry,
wait,
wait, stop. Harry, is your motion to table still on the table?
Second. It is now.
Let's vote.
All right, I thought we would have the opportunity to have a well-crafted set of motions that would satisfy the several competing demands here, but it seems that there's a good chance we will do more harm than good trying to wordsmith this on the fly. So I really think we should either table this and bring it back with a set of individual motions, which might be as many as 9 that we can vote on individually, or vote on the whole thing as a slate, and then reconsider. Those are the 2 things I think we should consider doing. And under the circumstances, I think tabling would make sense.
Neil, you had a
I just want to say it was never my intent to present a scenario where we would pass half a grant and not the other half. That wasn't what I was trying to do here. I was trying to divide this up in a meaningful way that would provide feedback to the committee, to town meeting, and to the voters. If that's better by item, then that's fine with me. I actually thought I was consolidating votes by limiting it to category. If that's not the case, then I agree with Harry.
Yeah,
Do
I
it the
think
way
it's
we
better.
do the CPA.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's better to divide them. Yeah. Within the
Yeah,
category.
but even so, we don't have the ability to divide them up within category now, because there are several motions that would have to be combined in reasonable language, and we would like to at least make sure we're doing that correctly rather than just cutting and pasting today.
But where Neil agrees, can we then reconsider now.
Do we have to
Well,
reconsider or can we just table it?
and reconsider later?
Well.
We should, we should reconsider that vote.
No, Elise proposed.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine to take a quick vote on whether we want to reconsider and divide the question into projects, individual votes on projects, but we're not going to take the votes on the projects
All
tonight.
right, so
Yeah.
let me move. Can I just move a replacement motion and save the reconsideration?
No.
No. All right, so I'll move reconsideration.
Second.
Iteration of dividing the question. Okay.
Michael Berger has a two-finger.
Yeah, I have just a question on this. Elisa brought up the idea of just a reconsideration of our previous vote to essentially consider it as one whole vote or to divide it, and we decided to divide it. But I thought that what she was asking was, could we reconsider the vote? What is it, vote number 2, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And I would move that. I think that's.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what distinction you were just drawing. I'm sorry. Say that again.
Because the vote that we had before that was dividing the question is the vote that we would reconsider, the one that was 14-10.
Right.
I think as the discussion has gone on, I think some of us would like to vote that particular vote.
We are.
Yes.
We are.
Isn't that what we're doing?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
but I heard that it would be divided into 9 and
Okay, what it says on the screen is we are reconsidering the question of dividing the question. If we want to, you're moving Elisa's moving reconsideration. If this passes, we will then take a new motion.
Yes, okay, thank you.
That's exactly what you want. We don't need to debate that.
Considering coming to this meeting in the first place.
I'm sorry, it's too much crosstalk, so I can't understand what people are saying. So the question is whether we are going to reconsider our previous vote. Michael.
Yes.
Harry B.
Yes.
Elise.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Harry F.
Yes.
David Mark.
Yep.
Neil.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Elisa.
Yes.
Janice.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Alec.
Yes.
Carol.
I'm gonna abstain.
Liz.
Yes.
Jocelyn.
Yes.
Donnell.
Yes.
Linda.
Yes.
Fran.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Carlos.
Yes.
Margaret.
Yes.
Lee. I don't hear Lee. Well, anyway, we're reconsidering that motion. So does anybody have a new motion to propose?
Sure.
Tabling.
No, wait, let's.
Well, don't we have to?
We don't have to do anything.
But so I actually started talking, so I think I have before. So I'm gonna move that we divide the question by project.
Can I move?
By project.
Do we need to vote that?
Yes, and tabling takes precedence.
Do we need to actually vote on Neil's suggestion?
Yeah.
No, if there's a motion to table, that will take precedence.
Yeah, so can we debate that? What is the purpose?
We can
of-
debate the motion to table like we debate any motion,
So
yes.
here's my question. What's the purpose of tabling a straightforward motion to divide the question? When someone's gonna have to put together the work to put the division into a report, when we only come back to find out that we didn't want it divided in the first place. So is there any controversy and any more information that anybody needs to vote on whether they want to divide the question by project? I don't, that's rhetorical.
Elise.
Well, I think from my perspective, I want to better understand what it is I'm voting on. And what I've realized is that there are some unintended consequences that we just didn't know about when we were talking about the bucket form. And so now I think what they're proposing, or I'm proposing for tabling, is to go through that and figure that out so that we can make an educated vote instead of just trying to get it done tonight with what little we know right now.
So I'm not trying to get it done tonight.
Carlos,
Trying to
Yeah,
move it.
I'll just throw the idea out, as someone else said before, that this is the same thing as the CIP, where if you do an omnibus vote of the CIP, then who knows who's looking at what, right? You're just saying we're doing all of it. And maybe that project that you weren't too keen about is still being done because you just decided to go with the whole thing. This is the same thing, which, at the end, this is like everything taxpayer money. And if there is a project in there that is sort of, you almost could say, hiding under the sort of in plain view by all the other projects that are around it, and it's not quite the one that you think should be funded, then this gives town meeting a chance to say that one isn't quite as doesn't really follow the ideas that everybody else, all the other ones do.
Plus, I'm also intrigued by what David Pollock said about the funding and using, using the funding from
Leverage, yeah.
whatever, it's the leverage funding. And, so expending more CPA money toward projects for housing. So I think by dividing it into 9, that would permit that question to be raised.
but we can't spend more money. Our options, I believe, and Nancy can correct me, are to accept what they have proposed or reject it.
Understood, but it would be a conversation, right? For the future. I guess that's the way I'm looking
Yeah,
at it.
so just to be sure that there is no undercurrent here. But there is no agenda on my part that is going to come back, right, and lobby against any individual project. I don't have that in mind. I think that it's best practice that we divide this question into logical categories. And if the most logical category is by project, that's what we should do. I think that this has been a good idea since the question was raised to first divide it, which failed. And I think that it is presumably just good practice that we can carry forward from here, take the time and be deliberate about how we allocate grants from CPA funds.
David?
I mean, I like where this is going, but I do want to say that we don't take 70 different votes on the CIP. We end up only taking 1 vote at the end, but the moderator walks through each item.
Right.
And if anybody wants to come to the microphone to address it, they do. And I think that's a good model, where, as opposed to asking town meeting to vote on each one.
So,
But we did vote.
if I might,
Neil?
so that at the time was proposed to the moderator, and the moderator said no.
That's right. That's right.
The moderator said no. If you want to divide the question, move to divide the question. And so there was a motion to divide the question.
So we could write to the moderator and see how he's
Yeah,
thinking
it might
about
be that
it
we
now.
could table at this
Yeah.
point.
Yes. Yeah, and then figure out for next time with the moderator.
But
Excuse me, Michael Berger.
Thank you. I'd like to piggyback on what David said. I think Nancy has done a great job. It's a complex issue, like the CIP is complex, but this is actually more complex because there are some regulations that constrain what we can do. I think if Nancy, as she usually does, always does, is explain it how it's done in detail and goes over it. I think I would prefer a single vote on as a package and not divided into buckets or divided into other ones, because people will not understand at town meeting what they can and can't do. And they don't understand the constraints, much like we're doing tonight. And that'll happen at town meeting.
Janice?
So I would urge us just to not divide the question at all.
Thank you, Janice.
Yes, no, I like what David said about using that as a model. We're not, and that's what happens is the CPA committee will talk about each individual project. We look at slides, there's a presentation, and that's what happens, actually more than we get when we do the CIP. We don't even get that at town meeting. We do all the work here, and I think that this is where we should be doing the work. And talking about it. I would support tabling this at the moment.
Neil?
Yeah, first of all, the moderator to go through item by item doesn't solve the individual votes and individual appetites of town meeting members. I think the voters are entitled, because these are in fact in very different categories with different passions. That's not satisfied by the moderator saying, raise your hand if you want to vote on this one separately. The notion of these items, unlike, I think, the complexity of the CIP, these items are quite straightforward. You've got the church steeple, you've got an allocation into the Affordable Housing Trust, you've got a roof repair in BHA housing. These things are not complicated for town meeting to understand as individual items.
Janice?
But they are complicated because from what you just said, you wouldn't know that there are matching funds, for instance, for the steeple. That's a whole different, if you just say, we're giving this money for the steeple, then we wouldn't know that they also have to do fundraising in order to get the money for the steeple. I think you're the body that should be doing the.
Here, please, how is town meeting any more or less informed one way or the other? The only question is whether they can vote individually. I think it's up to the petitioner in every case, right, to explain why they're making these recommendations. And if there is a recommendation that is made importantly because the BHA, for example, has the ability to leverage, I think that's an important fact. And in fact, if I go back to the time when we voted to divide the question, I made exactly that point after the vote to divide was after. It was exactly that point during the debate when I noted that an allocation to a private not-for-profit would not be leveraged, and that we were spending X amount of dollars to rehab a very small number of units, where that same amount of money given to the housing authority would be leveraged and create that many more units. That was my argument at the time, and that debate happened at town meeting. All of that information was there.
I'm going to agree with Neil in that whether you divide it into one bucket or 9 buckets doesn't make the individual buckets any more or less complicated. It doesn't provide more or less information to town meeting. The information Nancy and Laura and David have put together, if you look at the agenda packet tonight, 120 pages going into a vast amount of detail on what each of these projects is about. And again, as a member of the subcommittee, I had no problem with any one of these projects. I just believe that town meeting is entitled to not have to do a yes or nay on the entire thing. I think dividing it into the 8 projects, or however many projects there are.
There are 8 projects.
8. Makes a lot of sense. And obviously you're not going to divide it such that the old money goes to one project, but the new money can't go to the same project. That's picking, that it just isn't gonna happen, but I think the projects are entitled to a vote. And I really don't. I somewhat resent the idea of being there as a town meeting member and being told I have to do what we do with the school committee budget, which is vote all of it or vote none of it. And I will admit, in the past on that budget, I have voted none of it. Partly because of that frustration, not completely, but partly. So I think dividing this into the number of buckets equal to the number of projects makes sense. Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of towns, I was just looking at some of the towns that I know that have CA, and they do vote them individually because they feel that's the more fair way of doing it. So we're very good at this, and maybe this is why we're having trouble.
Okay, so as I understand it, there is a motion to table on the table. If that passes, we will bring it back soon with presumably 8 individual votes and a motion to, I mean, I'm not saying we will necessarily agree to split it up, but if the motion to table fails, then we'll have motions to split or vote as a whole or whatever. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on the motion to table?
Dennis, if we table this, to whom are we tabling it? And who's putting together
Subcommittee.
whatever?
Well, I'm hoping that someone like Neil, in conjunction with someone like Carol, since Neil's been the driving force and Carol has the data.
Okay.
All I know is that I have to do the CIP for next week.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Warrant Article 9.
So I just have a question. If it's a single warrant article, is there any precedent for changing?
Dividing, we divide.
For dividing the question?
We divide the question all the time.
Examples.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Is there anybody, Harry, is there anybody else signed up to speak?
No, there's not.
All right. So we're taking a vote on whether we're going to table this with the expectation that when it comes back to us, we'll have one or more votes that we can take that we will feel informed about. So my screen is so big now, I can't even see the names with all the other stuff on the screen. Michael, motion to table.
Yes.
Harry Bors,
Yes.
Elise,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Harry F,
Yes.
David Mark,
Oh, yeah.
Neil,
Abstain.
hang on one second, abstain, Harry, oh, sorry, Susan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Janice,
Yes.
Brian,
No.
Alec,
No.
Carol,
No.
Liz,
Yes.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Donnell,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Fran,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Carlos,
No.
Margaret,
Yes.
Lee. Maybe he's gone.
I
right.
believe he's on.
Okay, and Christine was not ever here. All right, so we're going to table 17 to 4-1. So currently we have recommended the revenue allocation, but we are still going to come back and at some point, hopefully soon, we'll send out an announcement, come back with the opportunity to vote on the grants. So thank you to the subcommittee. Thank you, Nancy. and the CPA committee, and we're gonna move on to warrant article 15. The talking about the payments in lieu of providing affordable housing. Who's doing the subcommittee report?
Brian is.
Yes. that
Okay,
is-
go ahead, Brian.
Okay, didn't know everything. All right, hello, everybody. Nice and fresh that we are. I was away for the weekend, as was Neil, and apparently, as I found out from gossip, we were in the same place. So I just want to assure this committee that Neil was not one of the people I saw stumbling drunk down Bourbon Street.
Well, you were drinking too much to see me stumbling.
I did not see him sober
That's not on
either.
me.
TMI.
So, okay, because I don't know who's exactly on the screen, I want to make sure, at least as of earlier, our own Alec, one of the petitioners was here. I believe Alec's still here. David Lescoyer was also here earlier, another one of the petitioners. The third one is Deborah Brown, who, as far as I know, is not here. As far as I know, no one's from the staff, or please correct me if anyone from planning staff.
Polly Selwell
Polly
is here.
is here. Okay, just so everybody knows, including me.
Yes,
Who's-
I am.
Maria Morelli.
Oh, and Maria is here. Okay, good. Thank you, Harry. Who are all here. And let me also note, I did not come prepared with audiovisual, but you do have my written report. It includes, among other things, 2 tables prepared by the petitioners. Maybe somebody wants to put those up so we can, they're worth referring to, and they're more interesting to look at than I am, than looking at me. Okay. So also note that the planning board approved this warrant article last Thursday. The Housing Advisory Board has not yet voted on it. However, there were 2 members of the HAB, Jonathan Klein and Roger Blood, the chair, at the subcommittee's hearing, and Roger's given me his blessing to pass on some of his thoughts, which are in any case in my report. So we have an inclusionary zoning requirement of 15% of new housing to be, and I don't have in my head in front of me the levels of AMI, but that 15% is the standard. But in our zoning, we have offered a choice to developers of smaller projects, letting them choose instead to make a payment to the Town's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, about which we've just had other discussions, in lieu of providing the required units on site. And the warrant article consists of merely one change of number. That's all it is. It proposes to amend the inclusionary zoning provisions of the zoning bylaw to increase from 11 to 20 units, the threshold at which a project no longer retains the option of making a payment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Now, this threshold was under 19 or fewer until 2023, when a warrant article changed it to 10 units, that is to say under 11, partly on the expectation that the Community Preservation Act funds, about which we've never heard of those, would offset any revenue loss to the Affordable Housing Trust. Since then, according to the petitioners, it's become clear that CPA funds face many competing demands and may not effectively fill the gap. Hence, this warrant article raising the threshold back up to 20, under 20, as it was a few years ago. And I can note that, according to staff, no projects in the 10 to 19 range have been built in the intervening years, but that's such a small sample that we can't learn anything definitive about cause and effect from that fact. The important point here is the multiplier effect of funds from the trust as they're leveraged to unlock other funding. The petitioners presented data, and can somebody put up the first of their tables? Anybody have that?
I'm not sure, is it?
It's there are 2 in my report. It's the top, yeah, the one with the individual projects that we right. That there is showing historical data from recent past projects, showing how much the Affordable Housing Trust invested and the total cost of the project and averaging these out to roughly a 15-to-1 return on investment. If for every dollar contributed by the trust, approximately $15 in total affordable housing value has been created. In other words, the trust contribution has been only 6.6%, with the remainder leveraged from state and federal programs, notably the federal low-income housing tax credit program. There's also a second table, which is forward-looking projections of multiplier effects for possible use projects in the future. And so it is above all this multiplier effect that argues in favor of putting money into the trust fund rather than providing the 1 or 2 or 3 units that these small projects could provide individually. I would say in the discussion in the subcommittee, there were no fundamental objections to this approach. I would say 2 issues that came up as questions, possible doubts that were generally satisfied, that were generally answered to our satisfaction. One of them was, would the housing trust funds in fact be put to good use rather than simply being accumulated? And this information came mainly from Roger Blood, chair of the HAB, and speaking for himself because the HAB has not taken a position. But he tells us that sites have in fact been identified for future projects, notably phase 2 of BHA's Walnut High project that could require on the order of $10 million, along with other sites already identified in the housing production plan, such as town parking lots. In addition, funds can be used not only to build, but to preserve affordable housing. And this is separate from the CPA discussion we had about repairing, renovating. Preserve in the sense that there are affordable housing projects for which the financing specified that the units had to remain affordable for a period of typically 30 years. And in some cases, that 30 years is coming close to expiring, and those will fall out of affordability, or the developer can have that choice, the owner, unless we do something about it. And so this could be a good use of affordable housing trust money as well. And a particular example of that is the Village Way project in Brookline Village, where starting next year, that 30-year expiration date will be approaching, which means we would lose those affordable housing units. And even more critically, there are tenants in those projects who would lose their homes because they can't afford market rents. Second possible objection, was the preference for mixed income on-site units rather than separate, totally affordable projects, which are typically, although not always, the trust projects. Now, the mixed income on-site status will remain for anything above 20 units. And so we're still preserving that principle. But when it comes to smaller ones, there's only going to be 1 or 2 or 3 affordable units, and that imposes a considerable administrative burden that staff assures us is significant. And when it's such a small number of units, the burden becomes significant vis-a-vis the gain involved. And so that may be hard to justify when instead you can simply put it in the Affordable Housing Trust where it can leverage funds. And so in the end, the subcommittee, in a unanimous vote of 4-0, recommended the warrant article to full advisory. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Alec, do you or any of your petitioners have anything, co-petitioners have anything to add?
Thanks, Dennis. Nothing from me. I think that was a great report, and thank you to Brian. I see David has his mute off. You may want to add something.
And I see, by the way, Roger's now here. He wasn't sure, so I just want to mention that. So he can correct my misstatements of his views if he so chooses.
Okay, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Brian. Yes, that was an excellent report. And I'm so gratified by the support that this warrant article has received. I just want to mention one thing, quoting from the actual explanation. I mean, you have the choice: Community Preservation Act funds or inclusionary zoning on-site units. So what we're saying in this warrant article is it should not be a choice. We should do both. And by expanding the threshold to 19, we're not precluding on-site, but we're adding the possibility of more funding going into the trust fund and the expectation that this would generate many more affordable units than by on-site. But that's, I think, the essence of it. That's the policy that we're talking about. And the effort here is to find ways to augment the Affordable Housing Trust Fund because it clearly has been a incredible resource to the town in developing affordable housing. Thank you.
Great. Questions or comments from the committee?
Linda Olson Pelkey.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that is that this change will not apply to the Harvard Street zoning, which has its own requirements and requires on-site house affordable units.
Fran.
Okay, so my question is, I have a couple of questions. So did you just say that the trust fund can be used to rehabilitate units as well as make new ones, or is it only to make new ones?
Can I just, the distinction I'm trying to make here, not rehabilitate, but preserve in the sense of where you have expiring affordability for where after a 30-year period, the affordability expires, we can put money into that. That's different from rehabilitating. So I'm not talking about rehabilitating.
So then that's three categories. Can you explain how they get people to sign on for longer than the 30 years? And the second is, does the trust rehabilitate units it has?
Roger's here. Roger,
would you like that?
I can comment on that. First of all, thanks, Brian, for doing a great reporting job. The trust is somewhat less restricted in its non-CPA from its non-CPA funded sources. So CPA has some statutory restrictions on in terms of what it's defined as its limits and how it can preserve. The trust can do is much broader. There's no such restrictions. So we preserve units and their affordability. We can upgrade them in any way, and as well as create new units. So there's no restriction in that regard. The leveraging that you heard reported on as a major reason for this article is really for the development of projects and the creation of new permanently affordable units.
Yes, but if it goes into the trust, it doesn't have to do that.
Well, the trust itself doesn't actually have units. We are just a financing vehicle for sponsors and owners and managers of units, affordable units.
So my question is, as a person who represents a precinct with one of the highest levels of 40Bs around and my precinct in the next door, how is this change potentially going to affect the acquisition of affordable units through development? Because it seems to me that when you're talking about these big projects, they're going to come on board in 10 years, whereas a small project is adding to our affordable units in a shorter time and will keep us in safe harbor. So has there been an analysis of the effect of this on safe harbor in the near future and further along?
Well, the difference between and there's been a review, and the petitioners and the staff have, and including through the HAB, have provided data the history of projects developed that are between 10 and 19 units, there's not a lot there. When one would come in, it could produce a significant contribution at an individual project level. And the amount of on-site units, one way or the other, that you've heard talked about here, the onesie twosies in the smaller projects, or even 3 units, even over a long number of years, any accumulation or lack thereof in those kinds of small numbers is not going to be the difference between having our safe harbor or not having it. We're above it now. Actually, the best way that we can see to protect remaining above it has far less to do with new development, but rather, and we're actively working on this now as we speak, being able to have the ample trust fund resources in dollar terms, so that we can contribute as a result of negotiations that involve the owner of these expiring units that are presently at Village Way and 99 Kent Street, and also with the state providing some resources as well. So that's really where the action is, in protecting the town to have this safe harbor. And you mentioned 40B. In other words, that we would be able to accept or reject 40Bs without the state overriding us.
Well, I know that small numbers don't count, but in last summer, when 429 Harvard was approved, we were 36 units under safe harbor. So a few units does make a difference.
No, it can arithmetically, and during that period of time when we were kind of dancing above and below the magic 10%, yes, there would be windows of time where a relatively small number of units could put us above or below. But looking forward, we're now above the safe harbor, and there's susceptibility to falling below if you've got projects that don't have their final certificates of occupancy. They're only temporarily putting us above. We're now between, well above 10 and closer to 11%, without having any of that be projects that are don't have their final certificates of occupancy. So I'm not saying you're entirely wrong in terms of the arithmetic, but I think in terms of the realities of what the planning department's analysis is showing, that those relatively small numbers of units that this article could affect one way or the other is very narrow and highly unlikely to jeopardize the safe harbor.
And if I could just briefly add to that, and thank you, Roger, I think that was absolutely spot on. One of the main contentions from the petitioners as well is that shifting to a more focused strategy that centers the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is arguably the best way to make sure we stay above the safe harbor percentage. And I just want to illustrate that with the second chart that Brian had shown, which shows that the difference in the number of units, total units at the end of a transaction we expect to receive under the current inclusionary zoning threshold, where only on-site units could be provided for, say, a 19-unit development. That would net us 3 on-site units. So to reach the 36 units we would have needed in the 40B example given from Harvard Street, you're talking about 12 developments of 19 units to reach that. Well, I would invite you to look at the bottom 2 rows, which show kind of the range we think is feasible for the ROI impact of spending from the trust with a cash payment instead. Now you're talking about, instead of 3 units for one project of this size, between 15 and 22. So you're talking about needing 12 units to satisfy that SHI gap under the existing inclusionary zoning bylaw, as opposed to 2 developments under a higher threshold where we could accept a cash payment. So, we think it's really important to view this holistically, both in terms of the potential for on-site units, but also the potential for the trust to deliver greater gains down the road.
I guess my question is, how far down the road is that? You know, is it gonna be 10 years before you can get enough money from those small units? You know, if you're saying they're only gonna add 2 or 3 units, how much money are they really gonna put in? And will that money be utilized, you know, when I'm long gone, or, you know, in the next year or 2 or 5 years?
Well, my understanding is that the trust just makes these awards on a rolling basis as cash comes in. So I think, you know, we do have, as was mentioned with Village Way, you know, a pipeline of, I think, affordability opportunities and projects that the HAB has really expertly cultivated over many years. So I expect these to continue coming in at a fairly steady pace, and having, you know, more reliable streams of revenue coming from, I think, a fine-tuned inclusionary zoning bylaw will just open up those possibilities going forward. But Roger could certainly speak about this with greater.
Well, in terms of the expiring use, which is a substantial number of units, and the expiration dates are spread quite a bit out from beginning the end of 2027, which is very close, and then going out, you know, 10 or more years beyond that in some of the other units. So the work we're doing now, which will, we don't have any exact numbers at this early stage, but will be in the multi-million, low multi-million dollars from the trust fund for the town's contribution to enable us to save and extend the affordability of the year-end 2027 units that are coming up first.
Roger, could you explain exactly how the HAB extends on something like Village Way? What are the logistics, or to whom do they give the money, or how does this happen?
Well, it's a complex circumstance because of the nature of the financings and the parties involved, and again, including the state and the developer. And we're just beginning, you know, exploring and having those discussions. But in effect, the state has the ability to bring funds to the table to basically extend affordability. And while when you look at the financing, obviously it would cost less to extend it for 10 years than for 30 years or forever. But the reality is, as I understand it, is that we're not going to be considering shorter terms of extension. We're going to, you know, if we do it, it's going to be, you know, for essentially perpetual. And as with new projects, such as you heard the leverage described here, in order for the developer to get priority from the state for their assistance, one of the main factors is the town is willing to step up with a substantial local contribution, you know, and put our money where our mouth is, that we really want to prevent these many rental units, they're both family and senior, from losing their affordability. So that's where the trust fund would come into play. The public monies eventually would be accepted by the developer in a negotiation as a way of having them agree not to allow these units to go to market and demand full rent and risk displacement.
So with something like Village Way, which is not being developed right now, when you refer to the developer, is that the same as the current owner?
Yeah, yes. In that case, I mean, it's public information. It's Wind Development. Yes.
Thank you. Dennis, that appears to be all the questions.
Okay, then I think we're ready for a motion from the subcommittee.
Right.
That's Brian, I think.
Okay, the subcommittee moves, or I move.
The subcommittee moves favorable action.
Yeah, the subcommittee does move favorable action on warrant article This is 15, right?
Yes, and there's no amendments or anything. So
It's just
oh.
what, changing one number to another.
Great, thank you. So we're voting on a recommendation of favorable action on warrant article 15. Michael,
Yes.
Harry B,
Yes.
Elise,
Yes.
John. I don't hear John. Harry F.
Would you come back to me?
Sure. David Mark,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Janice,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Alec,
Abstain.
Carol,
Yes.
Liz.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jocelyn,
Yes.
Donnell,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Fran,
Well, I'm unconvinced, so I'll say no.
David,
Yes.
Carlos,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
All right, so by a vote of 19 in favor with 1 opposed and 1 abstention, we're recommending favorable action on warrant article 15. Thank you to the subcommittee. Thank you, Roger and Alec and whoever I missed
David?
in thanking David. Yes, thank you. And I guess we can move on to warrant article 14. Is that you, Kelly?
That is. Hold on a sec while I get my notes up. Thanks, everyone. I know it's been a long night already. I will try to go through the report in some detail, but also respect the time that you've already spent at this meeting tonight. So the Land Use, Zoning, and Sustainability Subcommittee recommends favorable action on warrant article 14 as amended by a vote of 3 to 0 to 1. Subcommittee held a public hearing on March 13th to discuss the proposed changes to the zoning bylaw related to protected use ADUs. So if you remember, Brookline has a multi-year history with ADUs going all the way back to 2019. Most recently, in the fall of 2024, Brookline Town Meeting passed some updated zoning related to ADUs. And unfortunately, many of those provisions were rejected by the Attorney General in a letter that we received in June of 2025. And so basically, I'm sorry, let me go back. Basically, our fall 2024 warrant article was designed to bring Brookline into compliance with the state's Affordable Housing Act. And at the time, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities had not released any regulations. In between the time, we passed that warrant article. The AG's review, the EOHLC, I can never do that right, basically came out with regulations, and Brookline was found basically not to comply with all of them. So warrant article 14 has been filed specifically to resolve these conflicts and finalize our compliance with state law. The effort to put together warrant article 14 basically was convened by the Housing Advisory Board. We were a subcommittee of the Housing Advisory Board with membership from Advisory, the Planning Board, and the HAB, and were supported quite a bit by town staff. So thank you, Emily and Jonathan Simpson, for all your help in that. In terms of what this warrant article does, first off, it legalizes protected use ADUs as of right in all districts that allow single-family residential use. So previously, if you remember, Brookline had permitted ADUs in S districts. These are now permitted in T, F, and M districts as well. The size of the protected use ADU was actually decreased from what we previously allowed. So now it is the lesser of 900 square feet, or 50% of the principal dwelling's gross floor area. The subcommittee also, the warrant article would also eliminate all additional off-street parking requirements townwide for protected use ADUs. And really, we spent a lot of time in subcommittee discussing dimensional standards, so height and setback requirements, because the guideline from the state is that those requirements that are imposed by any municipality must be no more restrictive than those applied to principal dwellings or other accessory structures. And so the setback distance will depend on the unit's location in the lot. For example, a 6-foot setback is allowed only if the ADU is 75 feet or more from the front lot line. And so we were able to create some height and setback requirements that were specific to the lot in the zone. Warrant Article 14 would establish a 2-tiered height limit. Absolute limit matches the most permissive height for principal dwellings, which is typically 35 feet. However, under Warrant Article 14, evidence of any additional height above 22 feet would necessarily have to be filed with the building commissioner. And so this necessity may be demonstrated by the requirement to match the primary dwelling's roof pitch to accommodate some dormers for habitable space or line floor heights. And so again, ADUs are largely restricted to 22 feet in height, but they can go bigger than that as long as the property owner files evidence. One of the things Warrant Article 14 does as well is usage protection. So units must function as independent housing, maintaining basically a permanent sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities. And short-term rentals are strictly prohibited within an ADU. Also, more than one ADU per lot is explicitly prohibited. So during our subcommittee discussion, we debated the 22-foot height threshold as a check for legitimate habitable space. Staff explained that this check would prevent creating oversized accessory spaces for the primary home and does serve to ensure that the extra height is for legitimate reasons. We also, of course, talked about enforcement concerns regarding FAR or floor area ratio limits and illegal integration of units into the primary residence. And so one of the things that had come up was a suggestion to require a deed restriction. But town council had advised against that, as it would likely be struck down the AG because ADUs are now as of right. Staff also noted that exceeding the FAR would make the property non-conforming, which would block any future additions to the primary dwelling. And so during that discussion, we had, excuse me, basically, we had a great discussion about whether or not, again, that ADU could be incorporated into a primary dwelling, and ADUs should be self-contained, so there should not be any porosity between the two dwellings. And it was also noted that the building commissioner has the authority to re-inspect properties, especially during ownership changes. So if somebody had suspected that, perhaps the building commissioner would be able to inspect that. So one of the things that the subcommittee had asked to do was basically a couple things. So improved readability for the zoning by including full titles of the zoning sections. And so that was done and is part of the language we'll be voting tonight. And also subcommittee voted or actually made a motion urging refinement of some of the existing sections. So basically sections 404 and 405 within our zoning bylaw, basically to clean it up because the subcommittee themselves identified some orphaned language in 404. And what you have in front of you in terms of the memo that I'd written was the discussion that happened after the subcommittee. And so again, subcommittee members had identified some changes that they thought were needed to section 404 to ensure consistency, and pointed out actually one key phrase in section 404.3, which the phrase except accessory dwelling units were left there as an oversight. And so again, subsequent to our hearing, into our vote, the moderator had approved this particular change to strike the phrase except accessory dwelling units. And again, that is in the language in front of you tonight. While basically the details within section 404 and 405 were being discussed, Linda Olsen-Pelkey had raised concerns about enforcement of ADUs permitted under the previous rules. And staff actually explained that portions of the zoning are actually being retained to give the building commissioner leverage over some pre-existing units. And those specific parts do not conflict with any proposed changes in warrant Article 14. Linda also specifically asked about owner occupancy requirements would remain excuse me, in effect for the older pre-existing units. And both Maria Morelli and Town Council Jonathan Simpson clarified that the state regulations would do prohibit municipalities from enforcing, quote, unreasonable restrictions on units, regardless of whether, when they were permitted. So as I mentioned, the amended version of Article 14 is in front of us tonight. The changes that were voted by the subcommittee are highlighted in yellow, and the changes made in response to the subcommittee's second motion are highlighted in blue. And the subcommittee recommends favorable action on warrant Article 14 as amended.
Kelly, before we move on to the petitioners, since there was a lot of information that you just presented there, particularly in terms of the back and forth, can I just get clarification that the subcommittees, that the motion in front of us does address the concerns the subcommittee had?
Yes, indeed it does. So
Okay.
the motion in front of us basically includes the blue language, and the blue language was meant to address the concerns the subcommittee had about consistency in terms of language with relating to our previous ADU bylaws. So that has been addressed. And also section headings have been added again to clarify what they're referring to.
Okay, great. So let's move on to any comments from the petitioners.
David?
Oh, because Kelly, I think you're moving the amended version that includes the blue language because that was not voted by subcommittee. So then you could move it and I'd be happy to second it.
Okay, then.
Right. Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's good to clarify that the subcommittee did not formally vote that.
Kelly, one more thing, because you were on the ad hoc HAB subcommittee, is that not only did the subcommittee kind of kick the tires on this and really push back against some of these dimensional requirements allowing, height near side lot lines and everything, and hear back from Jonathan Simpson that specifically they'd gone over that with the state. The state was very clear that this was how it had to be done, but that also Dick Benka, do you want to speak to Dick Benka's participation with your committee?
Sure, indeed. And sorry, I did note his participation in the report, but should bring it up here as well, because Dick was really an active participant in our subcommittee and made some very good suggestions, especially around setbacks. And so when I was referring to setbacks within specific zones. Dick is responsible for that very important addition, which basically, quite frankly, instead of meaning that an ADU can be within 6 feet of a side lot line anywhere, it really imposes conditions on that. So only under very limited conditions could an ADU be built that close to a lot line.
Thank you. Well, I have two questions. One sort of to you and then the other's a little more difficult. Kelly, could you define porosity? I looked it up in the dictionary this afternoon and it has something to do with rocks.
So indeed, so it is, so sorry, Harry, you've discovered my my earth science, my love of earth science. And so indeed, porosity is that it's whether or not something is porous or whether or not there's basically an impermanent divider between the two. And so I believe that word was a direct quote from the transcript in the in our subcommittee hearing.
So if there's a DOA between the ADU and the main house, is that legit or not legit?
So what in our discussion would not be legit, of course, when it comes to any exits, they may, exits and entries to the ADU, they must meet state law and building code. So there's likely a door, but whether or not there's and Maria, you can help me out, but whether or not there is a door, an interior door that would, allow entry. Basically, our discussion was around whether or not there could be a wall and then that could be removed, and whether or not the rest of the facilities could be used in order for someone to, quote, game the system and build basically a principal dwelling with increased FAR, more FAR than was allowed under the zoning, was really the source of the discussion.
Thank you, Kelly. That was excellent. I would just say, in speaking with the building commissioner, in this case, a door between the ADU and the principal structure would not be allowed. You could have a common area where you enter with one door, there's a little foyer, and then each person, goes to their separate household, but there would not be a door between the two dwellings. That would be against the building code.
Okay, and my second question, as I understand it, we have an ADU bylaw, which was written before the state came down with its final regulations. And then the state came down with their final regs, and we thought we needed to change our bylaw to conform with the state. And the Attorney General, I guess, actually rejected our bylaw because it didn't conform. So my question is, do we have an existing bylaw that if the state ever changed their regulations might become legit, and therefore we're better off not making any changes now, but just keeping what we have, even though it's not enforceable?
Kelly, I'm just going to weigh in.
Please do.
We have to look at this point in time, Harry. And right now we're not in compliance, and that's a liability for the town.
And how is that a liability?
Because the statute, this ADU statute is under Chapter 40A, Section 3, which is known as the Dover Amendment. And anyone can exercise their rights under Dover. So the town doesn't have any leverage. If you are going to be out of compliance, what would happen is that someone could exercise their rights, or the building commissioner could say, this is the bylaw. I see that there is a disconnect with state law, refers it to town council, and then town council could very well say this would have to go to the ZBA. and the ZBA would have to work with the laws that they have, which is the state law. And so you're giving up more because you don't have really anything defensible, anything enforceable.
So let me see if you can translate that into something I understand a little better. By accepting this warrant article, do we reduce? And I'm staring at you in my computer. I feel ridiculous, but
It's okay.
by accepting this warrant article,
Mhm.
do we increase the town's ability to reject something that somebody is trying to do under DOVA?
Well, reject is a strong word.
Or influence.
I just want to say that the first order of business is to comply with the state statute. And also, if you look at accessory structures and dwellings, the dimensional requirements in that zoning district, it's what is the most permissive. So we do have regulations. It's not open season. And so that's important. Now, someone could say, even though it's complying with the state, I still find it unreasonable. Would they necessarily have a good case? They might not. They could still try. But I think that this really does protect as much as possible some of those kinds of tests. It's a management of risk.
Thank you. Other questions?
We didn't give Roger an opportunity to speak on behalf of the HAB if he so chose.
Well, the HAB appointed the subcommittee for the express purpose of bringing the town into compliance, and the AG's letter, I read it. It was very long, very detailed, almost daunting. So I decided to appoint a subcommittee and not be on it because I could see what they were going to have to go through. And having been involved in 3 prior ADU articles, and the most recent one with Kelly, who did a great job. The subcommittee led by Jonathan Klein brought their work back to the HAB, and we vetted and approved it without any dissent or concern on that sole criteria, compliance with the state. There were a lot of things that we had done at the local level that complied with the law. Maria will remember well, and the staff, and Jonathan Simpson, Dick Benka worked really hard through that as well. A lot of sort of compliance, but still greater sensitivities to, abutters and the details that then basically were set aside by the state almost entirely. So the HAB approved and recommends the article. The only thing that we haven't had until tomorrow, as with the IZ article, is the public hearing that will let us issue a report to town meeting. But unlike the IZ article, we've had a full discussion, and the HAB totally supports what you've heard tonight, and Kelly did a great job describing it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Linda Olson-Pelkey.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few words about all of this. I think the final product is probably the best we're going to get it. And unfortunately, our hands are tied on many, many aspects of this, which I find, really grating and annoying. And the way that the state does their guidelines, when they did the guidelines, they tried to make it's all about one size fits all. And in my view, there is no such thing as one size fits all zoning. So, but with the addition of being able to talk about where the ADUs that are external to the building, you can have it be either an expansion of a building internally, or you can have a standalone backyard ADU, which is much more expensive and complicated with utilities, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we have a good projection of what the response to this is going to be, but by making it a Dover amendment use and then giving us these really kind of bonkers guidelines. I'm voting for this. This is what we have to do, and it's really kind of the best that we can get it. And there were those questions about what applies to the pre-existing ADUs. And the state, in their vast wisdom, decided to tell us that we can apply our former standards, even though those units were permitted under our former standards. We have to go with this protected use. So this is the state with a club on cities and towns, and it's eroding our local control, and that's how I feel about it. But yeah, I think I like ADUs. I liked them better when they were owner occupied, because I thought that was the true use of an ADU. The true benefit of an ADU is the grandma flat and the home care and all of that stuff. But all of that's kind of out the window now. And I do think this is the best we can get it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jen, comment.
So Linda actually touched on something, maybe Roger or Maria can help explain it. I am really confused why they've pushed this under Dover, which is for nonprofits, religious and educational institutions. I mean, this is neither. It's not a nonprofit. Do you understand the rationale for putting it under Dover? Yeah.
Well, Dover encompasses nonprofit educational uses, daycares, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit. There's solar that's under Dover, and there's also ADUs. And I think, the state is probably making a statement about, housing. So.
Yeah, it's kind of on the same theme as the 40B. They don't want us to be able to regulate them very much at all, period.
Roger, are you
Yeah,
raising?
it's not only called Dover, it's called a protected use. It's a completely different status or section of the state zoning authorization for cities and towns. And the larger theme here is that what are the impediments towards housing production, producing units of housing? And this is a very desirable form of housing in a much bigger context. And by putting this under, it's like a as of right supersized. It's ramped up from as of right to really as of right. And it's a message, I think, as maybe Marie was suggesting, from the state to cities and towns. This is something that, whatever your inclinations are to set up roadblocks or prevent production, a protected use is going to make it much more difficult to create those impediments.
So follow-up question. So even other institutions that come here to expand or buy, they still have to follow certain town regulations, regarding I don't know, fossil fuels or it doesn't supersede all of our state regulations. No. You can't put something in that's unsafe.
No, they have to comply with state law.
But local bylaws too, no?
Yes, that's why we are putting forth several pages of an ADU bylaw. So there are parameters, and our bylaw probably looks different from, say, Newton's or another municipalities, just because of where our baseline was with our most permissive structures.
Thank you.
David.
Yeah, they have to comply with everything in the ADU bylaw. It's just, it's a protected use, so they get to do it, but they have to comply. I just wanted to say, an absolutely editorial comment that I'm excited about this, to see if there will be any ADU production in Massachusetts ever, because there basically hasn't been any anywhere, not just in our community, but in every single community. Our ADU regulations that we as a Commonwealth have locally passed in many, many different communities have been so across the board, so restrictive that nothing has happened. And there are a few pockets around the nation where much more liberal ADU regulations have been passed, where there's actually been significant housing production of these small units. And I don't actually expect this is going to make much difference. I don't think we're going to get a flood of these in Brookline. I think it'll be a trickle, but I'm excited about it.
Thank you, Carlos.
Yes, and Janice, I think last season we had the childcare bylaw that was a reaction or was updating our bylaws to conform with the new direction from the state. And it was also the same on the Dover. So as Maria may have implied, maybe Dover is what they discovered where you can just throw things in there because it's protected. That's not what she said, but that's what I was thinking.
Any other comments or questions?
Roger.
Apropos of the potential for production, one interesting aspect of the change that the state made in issuing the regulations that I don't think has been mentioned. We've all thought of ADUs as accessory to single-family dwellings, single-family properties, and the state changed the basic concept there so that it applies to any kind of residential property as long as the zone in which it exists, single-family homes are permitted. And to be clearer about that, ADUs will be allowed in apartment buildings. Admittedly, only one, but I've heard from owners of multifamily buildings who own and manage them that they see this as an opportunity for producing units, and I think it's a good opportunity where they're looking at their building, and is there some space that is unused or but suitable for a complying dwelling unit now. We'll probably see the creation from an investment purpose, ADUs and because Brookline has half of our housing stock is multifamily, so we're not like most suburban communities, and we may see some production in the multifamily buildings in town.
Thank you. Dennis, I think we're ready for a motion.
All right, so I think Kelly's going to make a motion.
Sure. So the question is, what is the language of the motion?
I think we're recommending favorable action on warrant article 14 as amended and included in our packet.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask if I could refer to the version in the packet, which is perfect. So moved.
And seconded by David, I believe.
Second.
All right. Share my screen. We're voting a recommendation of favorable action on warrant article 14. Michael?
Yes.
Harry B?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Harry F?
Yes.
David Mark?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Elisa?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Alec?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Jocelyn?
Yes.
Donnell?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Fran?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Carlos?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Okay, so by a vote of 21-0, we're unanimously recommending favorable action on warrant article 14 after the amendments and the good work of our subcommittee in producing a much better warrant article, as far as I can tell. Harry, do you want to set the stage for Thursday?
Yes, so there's good news and bad news on Thursday. The bad news, I suppose, is we're beginning at 6:30 instead of 7 o'clock. The good news is 2 warrant articles have dropped out for Thursday. The bad news is they're being moved to a new meeting on May 7th. So this coming Thursday at 6:30, we will be doing, probably in this order, the Office of Town Council budget, the building department, warrant article 20 on the 9/11 memorial, and warrant article 16 on 26 Pleasant Street, which is not being moved, but will take a no action vote. And it is a hybrid meeting. We will be meeting, for those who come in real life, we'll be meeting in this room.
And the town administrator was going to join us at the beginning.
That he's joining us at the beginning, which is why we're doing the legal budget first.
Yeah, I was just reminding people because people had asked to make sure that town administrator was here to answer questions that were brought up in the last meeting.
Excuse me,
Sorry,
we had a question here. Warrant articles 12 and 24 are not yet ready for prime time, because apparently the select board is doing some amendments. And the petitioners have told us it's really not a good idea to move it, to do it on Thursday night. So those are being moved to a brand new meeting on Thursday, May 7th. And Thursday, May 7th will probably also encompass whatever else we sort of move, kick the can down the line. And
Harry, can I ask a
Chris,
is Simpson gonna come on Thursday also? Because Callahan had said he was the one who decided to move it forward, and Christine Westfall was very adamant in trying to decide.
Joe's here.
Joe,
So-
hi.
Joe is here. We can ask Joe.
He had said last time that Simpson had done the decision making and referred back to him. It's too late for me to remember names.
I don't think, I'll let Joe speak, but I don't think Jonathan Simpson is coming because this is school vacation week and I believe he's out of town.
Okay.
Joe, can you confirm that?
I can confirm that, but I'm not familiar with what you were saying Jonathan decided that you need him, but he is out of the office this week.
Okay. You had mentioned at the last meeting in response to Christine Westfall's request on how the decision was made to go forward. You said you didn't make that decision. Jonathan Simpson had made that decision.
No.
Oh, was it Chaz? Chaz.
Yeah, it's Chaz, and that's why we're bringing Chaz on Thursday.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Dennis?
All right, I think we're all set then. See you on Thursday.
Dennis, what time zone are you in?
I'm back in East Coast time zone, but I'm in Virginia now for work.
Oh, okay. So
But I spent last week in California visiting my son.
when you said that we go all day, I was wondering how long your day was.
Yeah, yeah.